In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to prevent a mid-career crisis. Now, this is the second video in a series of 5, so let's crack on. My name's David Yeabsley, and this whole channel is dedicated to future-proofing yourself, so you can stay relevant and value for the rest of your working career. So if that sounds interesting and you'd like more content, please subscribe and we can work together on our future-proofing journeys together. So, time to switch off, have a little think and have a really good look in the mirror. And I think that's really quite important for us to do, to prevent a mid-career crisis. And let me talk you through this. Now, how's it all going? Now, it may be going swimmingly well, in which case, good on you. If it's not going quite as well as you'd like it to be in terms of work and doing things that you really want to do and the balance, our fourth video in this series is all going to be about getting back on track. So we'll talk more about that later. But if things are going well, I think it's really quite important to realise that and actually sometimes sit there and give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back and say, well done. But that's when we really do need to have a conversation. Why is it going well? But before we get to that stage, I'd like you to think about perhaps other things in your life, not just your career. Now, if you're just career focused, fine, just crack on with it. But if there's other things important to your life in terms of weight, in terms of our weight, what we eat, in terms of fitness, in terms of relationships, family responsibilities, the time we spend at work. If those other areas come into this, now's also a good time to think about this and how we're going to plan this out for the future. So have a think about that in terms of making those decisions and creating choices for ourselves in the future. So why have I been successful? And I think this is a really good question to ask ourselves. And what I've done in the past, can I get away with doing that in the future? What have I learnt about myself? What's my self-awareness like? Have I got the balance in terms of work life and all the other things that we talked about? Why have I been successful in terms of my technical ability, my communication skills, my management, my leadership skills? These are all things that we need to sit down and think about. Now, you may be in a position in a company that perhaps the people around you at your level and above, that perhaps you even report into, aren't particularly good at the coaching and the one-to-ones and the mentoring. So you may like to think about, how am I going to manage this? And I would encourage us to start having these conversations with ourselves or some other external help that I'm going to talk about in the future. So that's one way to start reflecting. The other way, which I think is a really good way, is what advice would you give other people in your current position if they came to you and said, okay, it's gone really well, but I'm a little bit concerned about the future and I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. If you can get a couple of those conversations with some good friends and sit and give them loads of great advice, but you know what I'm going to say, after you've done that, you can pat yourself on the back again, but then go and look in the mirror. And as I often say, David, are you listening to your own advice as I look into the mirror? And I think this is really, really important because it helps you to answer some questions and you think, I've got to sort myself out in a couple of areas, or I need to be more mindful of this and I've got to focus on that. Secondly, in terms of mentoring, how about helping to mentor perhaps someone in their late 20s, early 30s who are up and running in their career, and you're going to give them advice of how to make that next step, perhaps in a business and in their career, to their mid-career and perhaps until they're sort of their mid-40s or early 50s. What advice would you give them? And there again, you know what I'm going to say, go and look in the mirror and then think, have I taken any of that? What could I learn about the advice that I've given? We'll talk about reverse mentoring in a little while, something that's a little bit different. But let's talk about you as a top performer. Well, all I can say is congratulations, now to start writing your book and analysing and thinking about all your stories, all your achievements, all your accomplishments, all the challenges you've overcome. And I'd actually encourage you to start writing about these because it then gets you thinking, how am I going to continue this? And when we talk about top performers, I think our minds naturally sort of go perhaps into the sporting world. And there's two really good examples that I always talk about, mainly because I just find them absolutely fascinating and admire them immensely. The first one is Roger Federer. And I've never met him. I've seen him play a couple of times and just went, wow, You know, how can you be that cool, calm and collective under pressure? He never used to be, apparently, as someone I was talking to. But what I love about him, he knows why he's good. He knows what he's got to do to win. Okay, if his body can continue to go forever, well, that's another case that we could discuss on another topic on another day. But whilst he is still playing, he knows exactly what he's about. His self-awareness is immense. The way he looks after himself, the way he conducts himself is really, truly, a joy to behold. And I admire him immensely. And I look at him and I think that is the ultimate in professional responsibility. Another sporting team I'm going to look at now instead of an individual, and that's the New Zealand rugby team. Now, I've talked about this book before, and it's my favourite book of all, business book of all time and self-development book. It's called Legacy, and it's about the New Zealand rugby team, who are fairly good at the rugby, which I think is an understatement. But what they've managed to do is, like a lot of sports teams, they've got to the top, which sometimes they say is the easy bit. Staying there is even more difficult on occasions, but they've analysed it, they know what they're good at, and the whole book, called Legacy by James Kerr, really goes into this in some great detail, and it's a fascinating read. It's not just about getting up there, it's staying up there, and if you're this top performer, how are you going to change and develop to stay relevant and value in changing marketplaces? And this is the bit that I really want us to think about, that we need to perhaps sit down and have some conversations with ourselves. So it may be that you need to start thinking, if you haven't really started thinking about your future-proofing journey because you've been very busy, very successful, achieving a lot of goals, a lot of success and done well for ourselves. Are there any perhaps senior management or director groups that you could start to join? Entrepreneurial groups where you team up on a regular basis and you discuss each other's businesses. I think that's a fascinating exercise, which I personally enjoy. Because there again, we start giving other people advice, and then you walk out, get in the car, or perhaps do it on Zoom or Teams at the moment. You think, perhaps I need to do some of that. I've given some people good advice. Or you may like to look at perhaps investing in a coach or even a mentor. But I'll come back to the mentoring bit in a moment. It may be network groups. This is what I particularly like. I have accountability group where I just work with 3 or 4 people on a regular basis. We meet once a month and we discuss what we're doing in our work, and we set goals, we set actions, and it's called accountability group because you know what's going to happen in a month's time. Your now new colleagues in this group are going to look at you and say, right David, you said last month you're going to do this, this and this, where you're up to. And it's a great activity. It doesn't need to cost money. You just need to find 4 other people who are going to commit to it. It really is a great investment. Yes, I mentioned about mentoring. And it may be that you may like to talk to other people in your business or in other businesses that you could perhaps approach, perhaps people you've worked with in the past, and say, actually, I'd like some mentoring on how I'm going to continue to develop towards the end of my career. Now, perhaps we haven't even thought about when our end of career is going to be. And as we talked about on the first video, it may be that you've got to stay in the working environment for a lot longer for financial reasons. Or maybe you've got a great passion for what you do and you want to continue doing it. Whichever way, you've still got to take action and make sure that you stay relevant and value. So perhaps getting a mentor, but also I'd highly encourage you getting a reverse mentor. What's one of them, I ask you here? I would say, perhaps go and find some young adults coming out of university, or perhaps they're just starting out on their careers. How do they see the future? What do they think of your marketplace? What do they think of your business? How do they see the future in terms of technology and the digital world that we are very much part of now? And they can give you some ideas and thoughts that will just change your thinking. I love this exercise. And it really does help me immensely, because otherwise, had I not embarked on the future-proofing journey myself and started talking about of others, I could have seen that I was going to get myself into some difficulties. And get advice in your company from other directors or senior people that you trust, or technical experts, and also external. I don't know, perhaps there's some clients that you could just say, look, I'd just love to come and talk to you about how you see the future and how you're going to grow and develop. Start thinking about having these conversations. Perhaps you may be one eye on setting up on your own as a consultant or a coach, or perhaps doing something totally different. Go and talk to people that have done it and get advice and get some good advice, because you may find that you choose to do that and you think it's got to be wonderful, and you may sign up to a wonderful marketing program and a coaching program on social media, and then you get out there and the reality hits in. My market is absolutely saturated, and that there again is another great topic for another occasion. Think about your marketplace. Is it for the future, or is it dying out? Is what's happened over the last year and a half, 2 years, is that just speeded up the process of your marketplace perhaps being no longer? And I need to look at other opportunities. And also your company. Is it fit enough and strong enough for the future? And you also might like to think, what could be my exit strategy? What do I perhaps want to plan for the future? And start thinking work-life balance and all of those types of things, and perhaps other challenges and things that we'd like to get involved in life. It needs planning. You can't just turn up. Perhaps, you may be in your early 40s and you think, okay, I'll wait until I'm 55 and then decide. What happens if there's another crash in the stock market and you've invested in this pension which isn't really worth anything? So you need to start thinking about these things. And that's what I mean about going and having a good look in the mirror. I've also got another video on the site about, just getting a notebook and go and have a cup of tea with yourself. No devices, and just putting some titles in the back of your notebook of headings that you need to think about. So I hope you found that useful in terms of preventing a mid-career crisis by looking in the mirror and having a good look at ourselves and all the different tips in there. So as I said, this is the second video of a series of 5. The next video is don't go stale, keep things fresh. So how are you going to keep that energy and that passion going for what you're doing? Because we may still have another 15, 20 years, 25 years going. Don't look at me like that when I say that and you think, oh my goodness. But it's serious. How do we keep this passion and energy going? As I said at the start of this video, it may be that you need to get back on track with a few things. So video 4 is going to be about that. And the fifth video, if I can put my teeth in, the 5th video is about what skills and what knowledge and experiences am I going to need to continue to be successful. There's a wonderful book called What Got You Here Won't Necessarily Get You There, in other words, to the next step. And it does ask a lot of these types of questions in thinking, so that's worth looking at. So thank you very much for your time. Please subscribe, please like the videos, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one in continuing your future-proofing journey.